I really hope justice comes, because if it don't, they was just showing on the news at 12 o'clock reruns of L.A., Rodney King. They was just showing it on the news today. I really hope our city don't turn to that, but I got a feel that the verdict don't come right. We gonna see.
That was Ferguson resident Valerie Williams talking to MSNBC's Tremaine Lee about what she fears may happen in her city if Officer Darren Wilson is not indicted in the shooting death of Michael Brown. It's a sentiment felt by many in Ferguson as people again took to the streets yesterday calling for an indictment. I want to bring in Huffington Post reporter Ryan Riley and Liz Brown, an attorney, professor, and radio host in St. Louis. Good to see you both. And Liz, I want to start with you this morning. Give us some insight as to what we can expect if there is not an indictment.
Well, I think that most citizens are very, very concerned about there not being an indictment, and I think the community will respond. We have to kind of measure the response of the community based on the actions, the provocative actions that have been taken, like the action by the governor to declare a state of emergency based on, I mean, if you look at the law, you have to have a natural disaster of major proportions. This governor is looking back 100 days and saying that the burning of one building and rock throwing and bottle throwing is a natural disaster. That's a provocative action to take, because as a result of the state of emergencies, the law enforcement can seize communications. Law enforcement can track you through your communications. Law enforcement can seize cars. Law enforcement can get into your bank account. So right now, and this is a provocative action, citizens in this region are living under a state where they have no civil liberties as a result of being placed in a state of emergency. Provocative, and citizens respond to that.
Yeah, I want to bring up and talk a little bit more about what Liz is mentioning. Let's talk about this state of emergency that Governor Nixon issued yesterday. The NAACP, its president, Cornell Brooks, released this statement criticizing it, saying, quote, Governor Nixon's decision to declare a state of emergency without evidence of violence or danger only threatens to stir up tensions and denigrate the peaceful efforts of countless nonviolent activists. How are people in Ferguson reacting to this, Ryan?
Well, I think it's interesting because especially after over the weekend, you've had members, basically the leadership, the police are going to be in charge of whatever happened, the police response, whatever happens here, talking about their worries about overreaction and thinking that, you know, some of these news reports about people stocking up on guns and people being worried that they're not going to be able to get food could create too tense of a situation. And obviously the media plays a role in that. So I think, which is interesting because then when you have the governor declaring a state of emergency before anything has actually happened, that also absolutely raises anxieties about what will actually take place here if there's no indictment.
Yeah, and Liz, I mean, how would you see the governor, or should you see the governor acting differently on this? Because, I mean, he's really being very clear on these statements.
Well, I think it's ironic, Jose, that possibly, if you look at the law, the governor has broken the law in order to put our community under a state of emergency. So we have an act of lawlessness, perhaps, by the governor to respond to what he says are acts of lawlessness. So it is, the governor needs to be very clear and correct and lawful about the actions that he's taken. And I think that if you look at the law, he does not have the authority to engage in an act of declaring a state of emergency. It's troubling all across the line, and it's also fits within the pattern of the actions that this governor has taken in the past.
And Ryan, later today, that same governor will swear in members of the Ferguson Commission. He set up the commission last month to make recommendations on how to make progress on the issues raised by what's happening and happened in Ferguson. How successful could this be?
I mean, it depends how wide they end up going, because I think that, you know, the important context of Ferguson is that it's within the context of a much larger area where there are a lot of these tiny municipalities. I actually got to sit in on one of the tiny municipality courts last night, and it's just sort of amazing to see where you have basically someone in a household who's running a courtroom. It's just a house, and it's a very small municipality, and people who very much feel exploited by this situation. There was one college student I spoke with who goes to school 7 hours away, got a ticket over missing a $10 parking permit, had to drive 7 hours back because otherwise there would have been a warrant issued for her arrest for not appearing in court. So when you have that sort of situation, it's, you know, there's going to need to be broad reforms here, I think, in order for the situation to really calm down.
Ryan Riley and Liz Brown, thank you. It's always a pleasure to see you both. Thanks for being with me this morning.